On a bitterly cold January morning in 2000, a man walking his dog along the Grand Canal at the Kerrytown Bridge in County Kildare made a gruesome discovery. The lifeless body of a man was floating in the icy waters. The next day, as Garda divers carefully searched the canal, they pulled a second body from the water, marking the beginning of an unnerving mystery. The bodies belonged to 20-year-old Darren Carey and 19-year-old Patrick Murray, two young men who had strong connections to a notorious drug gang based in Ballyfermot, Dublin. The investigation revealed that both men had been executed with point-blank shots to the head. One had also endured a brutal sexual assault before his death. The brutality of the murders sent shockwaves through the local community and across Ireland. Authorities feared that these killings were linked to an escalating gang war, with Dublin's organized crime factions vying for control of the drug trade. Despite the media frenzy, investigators moved carefully, knowing that the victims' connections to powerful figures in the underworld could make the case even more complex. The investigation quickly focused on 24-year-old Mark the Guinea Pig Desmond, a violent enforcer and drug dealer with a well-earned reputation for brutality. Desmond had long been known for his ruthlessness, and investigators theorized that Carey and Murray had been caught smuggling drugs for him. In Desmond's eyes, this made them liabilities. His apparent solution was to lure the two men to a meeting in Ballyfermot, where they were executed without mercy before being dumped into the canal. Desmond's cousin, Jonathan Desmond, came forward with a crucial tip. He revealed that Mark had shown him an arsenal of firearms in December 1999, an ominous sign of Desmond's increasing involvement in violence. This revelation prompted a raid on Desmond's house, where police discovered a stockpile of weapons, including shotguns and a long rifle. These firearms were tied to local robberies and smuggling operations, further implicating Desmond in a web of criminal activity. While the case was unfolding, detectives started to understand the true extent of Desmond's ties to organized crime. His criminal dealings were vast, stretching beyond Dublin to international drug cartels. As the investigation deepened, further evidence of Desmond's criminal empire emerged. The shotgun found in the January 2000 raid had been traced back to Desmond, and it was discovered to be linked to various armed robberies and the distribution of heroin across Dublin. The full scale of his influence in the city's criminal underworld became ever more apparent. Desmond wasn't just known for his violence. He was also involved in a series of chilling personal crimes. One of the most notorious allegations came from a 15-year-old boy who accused Desmond of sexual assault. Desmond denied the accusations, and no charges were ever filed, but the allegations tarnished his image and reinforced his reputation for cruelty. As investigators continued their work, more witnesses came forward, describing Desmond's violent tendencies. An ex-girlfriend testified that he had threatened her with a shotgun, further cementing his status as a dangerous figure. However, despite mounting evidence, the trial for the double murder in 2002 was far from straightforward. Key witnesses began to back out, possibly due to fear of retribution, weakening the prosecution's case. In 2002, Mark Desmond's trial for the murders of Darren Carey and Patrick Murray began. The case was highly publicized, and many believed Desmond's criminal activities would finally catch up with him. But as the trial progressed, several key witnesses who could have testified against him mysteriously refused to speak. Faced with a weakened case, the state ultimately dropped the murder charges against Desmond. Desmond was convicted of firearms offenses and sentenced to 8 years in prison, a sentence that seemed shockingly light given the brutality of the crimes. Throughout the trial, Desmond dismissed his legal team and chose to represent himself in court. His behavior was defiant and arrogant, and his courtroom antics drew widespread attention. His final words before being let out of the courtroom were defiant. 8 years? I'll do it on my back. Despite his conviction, Desmond's time behind bars was short-lived. In December 2004, his conviction was overturned on appeal, and he was released from prison. The decision sparked outrage, as many felt Desmond had escaped justice once again. Within weeks of his release, Desmond returned to the criminal scene, quickly reasserting his dominance in Dublin's drug trade. During his time in prison, Desmond had maintained close ties with his criminal associates. Upon his release, he wasted no time in re-establishing himself as a key player in Dublin's underworld, becoming involved in a variety of illegal activities, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and organized robberies. His influence continued to grow as his operations expanded, and he built connections with even more powerful figures in the international crime syndicates. In 2004, yet another murder shook Dublin's criminal world. Maurice "Bobo" Ward, a former armed robber, was shot in an execution-style killing, and Desmond was soon linked to the crime. Ward's murder seemed to be yet another brutal example of the ruthless world Desmond inhabited. While investigators struggled to gather definitive evidence, the murder highlighted the violent power dynamics at play in Dublin's underworld. Desmond's growing network of associates and his increasing influence in the criminal world meant that he was never far from controversy. His involvement in various criminal enterprises allowed him to continue to thrive, even as suspicions about his role in multiple murders mounted. As the years passed, Desmond's criminal empire expanded further. He became a key figure in the illicit drug trade, working alongside notorious figures like Wayne Whelan and David Lynch. His reputation for brutality and ruthlessness made him a feared figure, and his control over the distribution of heroin in Dublin solidified his power in the criminal world. However, Desmond's rise to power wasn't without complications. Tensions began to surface between Desmond and his former associates, including Whelan and Lynch. The relationships that had helped him climb to the top started to fracture, and these conflicts would eventually lead to even greater violence within the criminal underworld. In 2006, Desmond narrowly escaped an assassination attempt that left him wounded. A gunman on a motorcycle opened fire on Desmond's car, but the weapon malfunctioned, sparing Desmond's life. He was shot in the arm, and his companion, Kevin Kenny, was seriously injured. The botched attempt on Desmond's life illustrated the growing threats against him and marked a turning point in his involvement with Dublin's criminal factions. Despite his narrow escape, Desmond's enemies continued to close in on him. In 2011, Kevin Kenny was murdered in a brutal stabbing, a clear sign that Desmond's enemies were growing bolder and more ruthless. Desmond's life remained precarious as rival gangs sought to eliminate him. By 2016, Desmond's empire was in decline. His former associates, including Whelan and Lynch, began to turn on him. Trust had evaporated, and Desmond was increasingly isolated in the violent world he had created. On December 2, 2016, Desmond was lured to Lucan, where he was set up by his former allies. Desmond had made numerous enemies over the years, and betrayal was inevitable. Desmond was shot multiple times in Griffin Valley Park. The execution was swift and professional, leaving no doubt that Desmond's life had come to a violent and fitting end. His body was discarded like many others he had discarded in his own rise to power, a stark reminder of the ruthless nature of his life. The investigation into Desmond's murder implicated several individuals, including Charles McLean, who was arrested for obstructing justice. It was believed that Desmond's murder was orchestrated by his former associates, with ties to the Kinahan crime gang playing a significant role in his downfall. His death served as a violent culmination of years of betrayal and retribution in the dangerous world of Dublin's criminal underworld. Desmond's murder remains one of the most infamous assassinations in Ireland's criminal history. His life, marked by violence and treachery, left a lasting imprint on Dublin's underworld. His brutal end, however, was a fitting conclusion to the violent path he had carved for himself.